Welcome to Pamper Splurge, where we talk sustainability served sexy. Hi everyone, I am your host and sustainability branding expert, Tania Semper. Welcome to Zoom Beauty. Love your face. We chose this episode because it seems like now, due to the pandemic, literally everyone is on video. Even those that absolutely hate cameras and being on video and photos and all of that are now forced to. And what's causing so many women and men now to undergo treatments is all because of this new lifestyle that we're living. So I've decided to hunt down an expert in mental health and addictions. Her name is Susan Raphael. Susan?
Hi, thanks for having me, Tania. It's great to be here.
Yeah, no problem. Welcome. So let's talk about the wonderful practice that you created, which is called Sustainable Recovery in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
So right now you are counseling the youth, individuals, as well as families, from what I understand, and covering all things mental health and addiction, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Pretty much. I am all on Zoom.
The Zoom boom, it's absolutely crazy, because even for myself, if I for a second look at the way I look, which like I'm not doing right now, because if I catch myself looking, I'm going to get fixated on my hair and my makeup not being applied correctly, or what I'm wearing, or whatever the case is. So it's really distracting. So are you noticing that with your clients?
I'm noticing it with myself, first of all. Yeah. I remember seeing a funny meme. It's like, am I a narcissist or socially anxious? Because I can't stop looking at my square and being concerned about other people looking at my square. So I think that we're all noticing a lot more, and noticing is a great part of addiction and recovery. However, we want to notice and have awareness rather than noticing and having that critical mind and critical thought obsession kick in, right?
Oh, absolutely. And what's interesting is that while we're all so preoccupied with the way we're looking, we're actually not paying attention or criticizing in our heads how someone else is appearing, because we're so caught up with ourselves. So it is sort of a little bit of a narcissism to some degree, as you stated.
Yeah, definitely.
I love the purple, by the way. I am happy that we're matching. And by the way, we did not coordinate this.
We didn't memo each other about that. No,
it's just feeling the purple.
Lovely spring colors.
I love it. Okay, so the reason why I decided to interview you specifically is because I myself struggled with body dysmorphia when I was younger, and I feel like it's still kind of lingering, right? I'm always preoccupied with the way I look, whether it's on video or not on video, and it's really taking away from being present in the moment. And I know obviously this is leading to a lot of other individuals, due to Zoom boom, getting medical aesthetic treatments and Botox and fillers and all of that. So can you tell me a little bit why you believe addiction and mental health play a very important role in this Zoom boom phenomena?
Well, and I think we want to back it up even a little bit more, given COVID and this global pandemic that we're all surviving through and moving through, and have been for over a year now. The basis of that from an emotion standpoint is fear. And fear is a part of anxiety, and then its cousin panic. So all of that elevates our anxiety. So anything that was pre-existing, our concerns about how we look or social anxiety, anything pre-existing is going to be absolutely magnified exponentially, really, in the uncertainty that the pandemic has presented to everyone. So any problem that we already had is going to be magnified. And then maybe some people who didn't really think that they had a problem, or a self-consciousness, or a concern about body image, or are now going to be noticing things maybe for the first time, because everything had been so dramatic in the changes, and our need to pivot right away and get online right away and adapt, really, for our own survival, so to speak, right?
Yes. And so do you have any surprising facts to share on that topic specifically?
Well, I did do a little bit of searching, and it doesn't surprise me that the statistics are there to evidence the fact that people are more anxious about how they look and about body dysmorphia, and what there is now being referred to as Zoom dysmorphia.
Mm.
Um, it doesn't surprise me because, as I said, as fear elevates and uncertainty prevails, people just don't know how to ground themselves. They don't know how to cope. They don't know how to come back to a baseline of calm because there is so much out there that's concerning. So yes, eating disorders are on the rise. My practice has been running at capacity and really beyond capacity for longer than I'm comfortable with.
Yeah,
So that to
it's
me is
good,
an
not so good,
indicator.
right?
Yeah, and it's great that people come back for a solution. A lot of my busyness has been former clients returning because some of these things that maybe had been very well managed, some of their symptoms, behaviors around anxiety, OCD, body dysmorphia, addiction or substance relationship or use have increased now because of the pandemic and because of the lack of support and the sense of isolation and the change, just the dramatic change that everyone's life has gone through and is still kind of going through, and the uncertainty. So I've definitely seen a rise in people's need for coping strategies and grounding, and to talk and to be heard and to be felt that they're understood, that they're not alone, that we're all going through this.
Mm.
Apparently 1 in 50 individuals suffers from body dysmorphic disorder. That's about like 1.7 to 2.4%. Now, statistics are always a little bit iffy because we don't know what the source is, but it gives you a sense of how that's presenting. And there's also this whole spectrum of disordered behavior and symptoms too. So I like to refer to things rather than as a diagnosis, as the response to the diagnosis. What are we doing about it? And maybe we fit somewhere in a continuum of a diagnosis or a classification of a diagnosis. Like, not everybody is fully diagnosed as body dysmorphic disorder, but they might have symptoms and behaviors that are greatly interfering with their quality of life day to day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really shocking because I've seen and I do like how you've that term Zoom dysmorphia, because we're constantly referring to it as a Zoom boom, almost like this is positive, but it definitely has its repercussions. In Vancouver, there's a cosmetic surgeon who has said that there's been a rise in facelifts. And I remember reading an article not too long ago where individuals are going into a surgeon to go basically meet with their surgeons and cosmetic estheticians and so on. And they're asking to look like their filters, which to me is just shocking. Like you can, unless you're Cher and you've got an unlimited amount of cash flow to spend and continuously spend on yourself to update your face, I mean, it's just not going to be possible. And so where I felt the importance in your specialty, dealing with addictions, I feel like this is such an important thing, because while we're not liking our face and then we're getting it fixed to like it again, we're still going to go back, because obviously we're aging, our face is going to change. There's going to be different things we're going to want to do, because once you start, it's sort of like you just can't stop, which is why I thought your specialty really ties in beautifully with this whole topic.
I've seen that for a number of years with younger and younger individuals seeking injectables or enhancements, and how I know from my experience and from the addiction lens, from looking through the addiction lens, that we get desensitized. So if we're used to, and it's the reward that we're putting on the treatment that we might be getting, if we feel that it's enhancing us in some way, then we're going to, the association in the brain is going to be that we want to do it more. And then, so like this more is better kind of notion that a lot of addictions fall under, more is better. And who are we going to rely on for the baselines and to accurately, I mean, we all know, we've seen people that look like they've had too much in the way of enhancements. Is how, where's the barometer, right? Where's our own barometer? How are we going to know that we've done too much, or that we might be excessive in it? Because this particular behavior, we might not be talking about. We might not be talking about how frequently we're going to the dermatologist or going to have an enhancement, right? Because it's we're wanting to look a certain way without people thinking that we've had procedures. So there's a whole other kind of covertness around aesthetics, right? And around beauty.
Well, what's interesting is the pandemic is actually the perfect time to get these treatments done, because our faces are covered. We're spending so much time in lockdown, and then when we're out, we're wearing masks. So perfect time to fix your face. But obviously, we don't want to encourage that. And at the same time, it's unfortunate for those who have undergone, lip injections and all that, because nobody's getting a chance to actually see the work that's been done. So it's
right. Yeah, I'm not buying any lipsticks these days.
Right? Oh no, it's such a messy experience. There's whenever I take off my mask, because like I refuse to leave home without lipstick. I just love it. It's like the ultimate accessory. And then so the inside of my mask is always like disgusting looking, because my lipstick rubs off on there. So now there's these lip stains that have been designed specifically for mask wearing. So there's a little,
a little humor there too, right? Tongue in cheek.
Yes.
Yeah. I had a thought there, but it's gone.
It's gone. It'll come back.
It's such an interesting area. It really is.
Yes.
And people are going and having things done that they can get done well under the auspice of this. But then there's a lot of things that we can't do that would normally ground us. Like I haven't had a facial in over a year, and I used to go pretty regularly for a facial. So that's some of those self-care things that we would do to make ourselves feel better and to contribute to self-care without being problematic or kind of an unmanageable behavior. Something when you said the word fix, right? I think that's a really key word in terms of thinking about whether a behavior is becoming problematic, because what are we trying to fix? What are we trying to achieve? Do we want to feel better about ourselves so that we're liked more by others? Like what's the goal? Why are we trying to fix our face or fix our appearance? And I think when we kind of deconstruct some of that, and just what you're doing is great, because we're talking about it. We're giving people a sense that they're not alone if they're thinking about it or preoccupied with how they look. And do we need to fix, or do we need to fix something on the inside to feel better about what we're presenting on the outside, right? Like there's this illusion that in order to be loved, we need to find that from the outside. And I think that's a huge illusion for so many different levels of life, not just aesthetics. Do we have to kind of buy something and change the way we look, or fix something in order to be accepted, or in order to feel that we're like able to level up into the game? The Zoom game, in this case, what we're talking about is the Zoom game of life.
Yeah. And I think you raise an important point, actually, because, when I throw around these words like fix, I do it innocently, but actually that could be problematic, because the language that we're using to describe ourselves and just describing the situation to others is a key indicator in how we treat ourselves and how we perceive ourselves. So do you feel like the words we use and maybe like actively choosing words that are more loving can actually change our relationship with how we appear on video and any other moments?
Yes, I definitely think so. And to maybe check in with yourself about why you're getting an enhancement, or why you're seeking the solution that you are. Is it to feel better about yourself? Because when you feel better about yourself, you elevate your confidence and elevate your message. We talked about this preparing. is it about the message or the messenger? Is it about how we're showing up? Is that just about our physical aesthetic, or is that about our real presence? And those are two different things.
Yeah.
Being present, and then our physical presence and how we appear are really two different things, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But very, very much linked, very much linked. Because I know when I feel better, I sit more confidently, or maybe if I feel better about myself, I'm going to pick a sharper outfit, or I'm going to, that's just my personal experience. When I do feel better, I do tend to, I guess, do better, if you will. Now, at the same time, too, like I was definitely reared in my recovery from my mental health and addictions, taught to suit up and show up, show up and dress appropriately for a situation, like make yourself appear respectful, right? Appear as if you have some self-esteem and self-respect. And that, so that's definitely something that I've wrapped up into like my kind of sense of being a professional and being someone in recovery and carrying a message and being respected, right? But again, it's if we take things too far, or if our kind of pendulum gets skewed, and I think that's what the pandemic has done, is that it's offset our norm and what we're comfortable with, and there's a lot more fear, and there's a lot more anxiety in general, and that anxiety is gonna look for things to latch onto. And being critical of our face on Zoom is if we spend many hours on Zoom a day, that's something our anxiety is going to definitely latch onto.
Oh yeah, especially if you're going to watch the recording afterwards, right?
Afterwards,
that could just be.
Yeah.
I actually make sure that I don't edit my own videos, and I also do not watch them again, because otherwise I'm going to remove certain moments that I didn't like. I'll be too hard and too critical of myself, and so I just decide to skip that process and just deal with it. And that way I'm like forced to publish the content and not be too finicky and picky about.
I think that's great. I think that's a great way of compensating and adapting to. It's kind of like reviewing a conversation that you've had over and over in your head right after you've had it. There's not much point. There's not much point, and you're also likely to slip down that rabbit hole of getting over attached to the content.
Absolutely. And actually, as you were talking, I was also thinking about how so there's this app right now, which is I don't know if you've seen it. It's basically, I'd like to say that it's amplifying Botox and filler treatments. So it'll make you look like an overdone version of yourself when it comes to cosmetic enhancements. But I'm telling you, this actually looks like some women that I know. I'm like, is this an app, or is this like, it's shocking that this is supposed to be an exaggeration of how people look if they do too much. But this is actually becoming the norm, because I've seen so many in my own network, and working in medical aesthetics, I've seen so many beautiful women start off delicately and making these little enhancements here and there, where you're supposed to kind of wonder, like, did they have anything done? Because it looks so great. Right. And then sure enough, you see them a few months down the road, and then like a year down the road, and then all of a sudden it's like they took it too far, right? So this is where the addiction part comes into play. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because we talk about addiction when it comes to alcoholism, and we talk about addiction when it comes to sex. You can be addicted to sex. You could be addicted to drugs. You could be addicted to so many things. You could be addicted to coffee. I am addicted to coffee. I'm going to be the first one to admit I'm addicted to lipstick. I do not leave the house without it. And meanwhile, my husband thinks I look like a clown, but yet I think I look beautiful. So that's just my go-to. So this is where it becomes like, why don't we have a beauty rehab? Why aren't we focused more on that? Because that is problematic, and yet we're not treating it as such.
It's so many interesting points there that you address, and I think that there is this kind of awareness around the day-to-day addictions. Our cell phones, we know that if we put our cell phone down or we think that we've lost it, there's going to be a panic response. That's essentially a withdrawal, right? We're withdrawing from a substance that we're used to having on a very regular basis. And we all kind of talk about these day-to-day addictions, coffee, sugar, food is engineered to be addictive. It's many individuals are trying to get food to be as addictive as possible so that it does hijack these reward systems in the brain. And the same with apps and social media, and people are designing them so that we don't want to put our phone down. So we always have to be kind of counterbalancing and offering our brain something more appealing than these really designed to addict apps, and technology is kind of the easiest one. So and then with beauty, if people aren't talking about it, if they're not addressing what's normal in terms of enhancements, what's normal and what's okay, and what's not, and what's too much, and what if the too much becomes the trend, and younger people are going and getting, so how are we going to address that? And we're not talking about beauty in terms of addiction yet. So I think these are great topics to be discussing so that we can feel comfortable to nudge each other, or to say, this is not okay. And who's driving this, right? Is it media? Is it the aesthetics industry? I don't know. That's you have experience in that field. Who's driving it? Is it marketing? Is it or is it all our insecurities as needing to change in order to be enough and to feel enough and to do enough? And that's a whole other, I mean, that's common to a lot of addictions, right?
Exactly. It's all connected.
Yeah, over functioning, over buying, overdoing. When is it enough?
Yeah.
When are we enough?
I like that. Yeah, when are we enough? Because if we valued ourselves more, then we wouldn't be so preoccupied with the way we look. And I've met individuals who actually, are not magazine perfect per se, and they are the most wonderful people. Like, they're so real and authentic and in the moment, and it's like their vibe is so contagious. And I'm like, wow, I love that. And you feel so energized after seeing them. And it's just like, if only we would practice more of that, because they just don't, they're not focused on the way they look. They're just so simple and happy. And I think that we need to definitely practice more of that, like care less and invest more on how we're not how we're appearing, but how we're showing up in terms of the content we're sharing, like our personality, our knowledge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And care less, do less, which sounds so counterintuitive, because we're all out there trying to do the best we can. I've been seeing it a lot on Instagram and just digital media. I look at my followers and I look at my stats, and I see a lot of women over functioning on Instagram as they're over functioning as moms, as professional women, as partners. It's like, maybe we all need to do a little bit less and focus a little bit less on the material and the superficial. So I'd like to think that we could work more on how we present ourselves rather than our physical presentation, right? More on our presence. And then that gets into grounding, which I know we're going to talk about.
Yes. That I was just going to ask. So before we even touch on that, I wanted to ask you, have you heard of the effects of the super power pose?
Oh, yes, I have.
You have to apparently hold your pose for, what is it, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, but you just like look at yourself in the mirror and just hold this pose. And then apparently it's supposed to give you like this jolt of confidence. And I do it, but I forget to do it. So talk about some exercises.
So I mean, we're getting into brain hacks here, which I love, right? Like, say, when I studied at a graduate level, it was many, many, many years ago, before we had the science about the brain that we do today. And what I love is that the brain science that we're learning about now is really just reinforcing all of the things that kind of knew, but more on an intuitive or more on a spiritual level. Or so the brain hacks are great. The power pose, yes. So your brain will respond to that, just as your brain responds to your eyes being closed and your feet being flat on the ground. That's giving the brain a signal that you're safe, and it will respond to that accordingly. So it starts to calm, the nervous system starts to calm. And I think that we all know what it feels like to have our nervous system stressing and starting to ramp up, and the anxiety, whatever our anxious provoker is, whatever the trigger is. I think we can all relate to, like, the heart rate is increasing. And so it's really important to have awareness around what your individual, what your personal system, how it's responding to stress. My mouth gets dry. I have difficulty formulating words when I'm really under stress. My heart will I'll get sweaty. I'll get more fidgety, clammy hands. So once I'm able to notice those symptoms, I'm aware that, okay, I've been triggered. Something's triggering me. I don't have to over focus on what the trigger was. What I can immediately do is center myself through breath. Is the easiest and always accessible hack. Once we breathe, we start to settle, because what happens when the brain gets a little bit more stressed, it slows the respiratory system, because it's reserving energy for a potential fight or flight response. We have to remember we're still animals. Even if we're animals that are talking about aesthetic treatments, we're still fundamentally mammals, right? And our brains are still very hardwired to protect us at any cost.
Yeah.
So the more understanding we have about, and awareness we have about what's going on in our body, the more control we can have over it. So the power pose is brilliant, or a couple of jumping jacks. Put on your favorite dance music song and a few dance steps before you get onto a call. Will get the blood pumping, and it will invigorate. It will get the blood flowing. The endorphins, different neurotransmitters will be released, and we can use that kind of as fuel.
Yeah.
And similarly, when we need to calm our system, breath. And I think that most people can appreciate that when they feel anxious, they don't feel it in their feet. So by putting our feet on the ground immediately, there's a pretty easy hack there as well, where we can just feel the ground, and that will give the brain a sense of calm, like we're safe, we're grounded.
So barefoot, are you suggesting?
Anything at the moment, barefoot, yes, and then anything to awaken our senses. So if you are barefoot, what does the carpet feel like? Maybe rub the toes back and forth on the carpet. Think about your toes individually, trace them with your mind. An excellent calming, grounding exercise is to trace our finger while we're watching. So we trace our finger with our forefinger from our other hand while we're watching it, and that engages our eyes. So that sense is engaged. It engages our breath, because we're breathing as we're aware of what finger we're going over, and our tactile sense. So the more senses that we can engage at one time, and it's not a challenge, it's just that the less we're going to be thinking the anxious thoughts.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. Actually, as you were showing me how to do the tracing, I was doing that as I was listening, and I was, I think that obviously we'll do that before we kick off a Zoom meeting, but what can we do during? So
yeah, well, you could even do that during. I mean, you could be touching your hand. You could always be breathing. I mean, if you're concerned about someone hearing, you can mute yourself. But you can always you don't even have to change your breath. You just need to bring awareness. So bringing awareness to, because we don't realize we're breathing. We do it unconsciously. If we can bring our conscious awareness into the fact that we're breathing, there will be a calming sense there.
Yeah.
So it's that, if, there is the sense that we're anxious,
Yeah.
and we'll have that sense that we're anxious. So that that part of us that's aware that we're anxious is not anxious, and we have to wake up that part. The anxious part's already we have to wake up the part that notices that we're anxious, and then that will be the part that calms us. That will be the part that says, okay, breathe. That
Right.
anxious part is around. So does that make sense?
Oh my gosh, it definitely makes sense because
Yeah.
I'd like to say that I'm quite self-aware, and so I do catch myself in the moment where I can be anxious, and I'll remind myself, okay, Tanya, just like snap out of this. You're doing fine. I like to say perfectly imperfect, because I feel like when people are imperfect, it just resonates. I feel like it's relatable, and most of the time it's actually funny, right? You can laugh it off. We're always
Absolutely.
obsessed with being perfect, and that can be
Absolutely.
very anxious and stressful.
Yes, being perfect is so overrated. And
Yeah.
back to your point about people being kind of more that sense of when they're approachable, as when somebody is okay with making a mistake, okay with
Yeah.
making an error, and they can laugh about it, and they can kind of there's like a camaraderie or a bit of bonding that can happen when somebody fumbles and they don't really care about it. They just but acknowledge it at the same time. They're
Of
not
course.
pretending. Yeah, so I think there's a real just a humanness, right? Like
Yeah.
we're all vulnerable, and we're all human, and we're all doing the best we can in in a very imperfect realm.
Like right now, I'm having a very imperfect moment. My dog is going absolutely bonkers, and there's nothing I can do about it to
Yeah,
quiet him. So I'm
yeah,
just going to not pretend that he's not doing this, but I make a point that this is happening. And I know you also have a dog.
I
And
do. And
so there's that relatability.
yeah, yeah. And something else I noticed today with getting into spring is we've got the landscapers around, right? Usually, maybe we're in office buildings, so we don't notice that the grass is being cut
Yeah.
by 12 neighbors on 12 consecutive hours all day long, right? Things like that. Yeah. And
Yeah.
my dog Buster has um, bombed a lot of busted into a lot
Yeah.
of Zoom meetings, and as self-conscious as I'll be, as embarrassed as I'll be, he gets so much attention. People love
Yeah.
it. People
It's
really like it,
great.
and
It's
he
great.
misses seeing his clients too. He
Aw,
misses seeing people in
of
person. So
course. Oh,
uh,
I love that. I really love this conversation because it really does come down to awareness, being aware that this could potentially be a problem, being addicted to the way we look, and that just simple grounding exercises, and also working with you to identify what could be the underlying issue there that could be worked on, right? So how do people get in touch with you?
how do they get in touch with me? Well, they can email me, they can text me, they can Instagram message me, or
They could
best.
TikTok you, YouTube you. Nowadays, there's so
Yeah,
many
pretty
platforms.
much all of the above,
Yeah,
and that's something that creates some anxiety too, is checking all of our social media feeds, right? Mostly I'm on Instagram, and
right.
people text and email, and I have lots of referrals. And and I do like to post. I do like to post things that are interesting and timely, and sometimes it strikes a nerve with people, and they really appreciate it. So
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat about this. I know it's your world, and I know a lot of individuals are dealing with this right now. So I would hope that they'll give those grounding exercises and super poses and outlining the fingers a try to see if they can get in that moment and catch themselves. If they're a little too focused
absolutely,
on being perfect all the time. So thank you.
absolutely. Yeah, you're so welcome, Tanya. It's been great to be with you.
Likewise. So enjoy your what kind of feels like spring, not so spring, still kind of cold.
It's
Enjoy the
lovely.
weather.
It's lovely. Yeah.
Okay, we'll be in touch.
Thanks.
Talk
Bye for
soon.
now.
Bye.